If thou beest she, but oh, how fallen, how changed from her who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness, didst thou shine myriads of bright. She, who mutual league, united thoughts and counsels, equal hope and hazard in the glorious enterprise, hath joined with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruin. To what pit thou seest, from what height fallen, so much the stronger proved he with his thunder. And till then, who knew the force of those dire arms? Yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can else inflict, do I repent or change. No change in outward luster, that fixed mind in high disdain, from sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits armed, and shook his throne. But though the field be lost, all is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate and courage, never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. That glory never shall his wrath extort from me, to bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee, and deify his power, who from the terror of this arm so late doubted his empire. That were low indeed, since through experience of this great event, in arms not worse, with foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force or guile eternal war.
Oh, Prince! Oh, chief of many throned powers, that led the embattled seraphim to war under thy conduct! Any dreadful deeds, fearless, endangered heaven's perpetual king? Too well I see and rue the dire event. The sad overthrow and foul defeat hath lost us heaven. And all this mighty host in horrible destruction laid thus low. As far as gods and heavenly essences can perish, the mind and spirit remain invincible, and vigor soon returns. But what if he, a conqueror, whom I now perforce believe almighty, since no less than such could have overpowered such force as ours, have left us this our strength and spirit entire, strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service as his thralls.
Fallen cherub, to be weak is miserable, doing or suffering. But of this be sure, to do aught good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our soul delight, as being contrary to his high will, whom we resist. If then his providence out of our evil seek to bring forth good, our labor must be to pervert that end, and out of good still to find means of evil, which ofttimes may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him if I fail not, and disturb his inmost counsels from their destined aim. Seest thou yon dreary plain, this seat of desolation, void of light? Is this the region, this the soil, the clime that we must change for heaven? This mournful gloom, that celestial light? Be it so, since he who is now sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors! Hail, infernal world! And thou, profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I still be the same, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. But wherefore let we then our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our loss, lie thus astonished on the oblivious pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or with rallied arms to try what may yet be regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell.
Leader of those armies bright, if once you hear that voice, your liveliest pledge, in hopes, in fears, and dangers, heard so often worst extremes, and on the perilous edge of battle where it raged, in all assaults, your sure signal, you will resume new courage and revive, though now ye lie groveling and prostrate on yon lake of fire. Wonder, fallen from such a pernicious height.
Princes, potentates, warriors, the flower of heaven, once yours, now lost if such astonishments as this can seize eternal spirits. Or have ye chosen this place after the toil of battle to repose? Or in this abject posture have ye sworn to adore the conqueror, who now beholds cherub and seraph rolling in the flood? Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. Powers and dominions, deities of heaven, I give not heaven for lost. From this descent, celestial virtues rising will appear more glorious and more dread than from no fall. Me, though just right, and the fixed laws of heaven did first create your leader. Next, free choice, established in a safe, unenvied throne, yielded with full consent. The happier state in heaven, which follows dignity, might draw envy from each inferior. But who here will envy, whom the highest place exposes? Foremost to stand against the thunderer's aim, your bulwark, that condemns to greatest share of present pain, that with ambitious mind will covet more? With this advantage then, to union and firm faith and firm accord, we now return to claim our just inheritance of old, surer to prosper than prosperity could have assured us. And by what best way, whether of open war or covert guile, we now debate. Who can advise may speak.
My sentence is for open war, of wiles who contrive who need or when they need. Not now, but while they sit contriving, so shall the rest. Millions stand in arms, longing wait the signal to ascend, sit lingering in the prison of his tyranny, who reigns by our delay. No, let us rather choose over heaven's high towers and force resistless way. The event is feared should we again provoke our stronger. Some worse wrath may find to our destruction. There be in hell fear to be worse destroyed. What can be worse than to dwell here, driven out of bliss, to condemn this utter abode? What fear we then? What doubt we to incense his utmost ire, which to the height enraged will either quite consume us and reduce to nothing this essential, happier far than to have miserable eternal being. Or if our substance be indeed divine and cannot cease to be, we are at worst on this side nothing, and by proof feel our power sufficient to disturb his heaven.
Right.
I should be much for open war, O peers, as not behind in hate. If what was urged did not dissuade me most, and seemed to cast ominous conjecture on the whole success, when he who most excels in fact of arms, in what he counsels and in what excels mistrustful, grounds his courage on despair, and utter dissolution is the scope of all his aim after some dire revenge. First, what revenge? The towers of heaven are filled, scorning surprise. Or could we break our way by force, and at our heels all hell should rise with blackest insurrection to confound heaven's purest light? Yet our great enemy would on his throne sit incorruptible, and the ethereal mold victorious. Thus repulsed, our final hope is flat despair. We must exasperate the almighty victor to spend all his rage. And that must end us. That must be our cure. To be no more. Sad cure. For who would lose, though full of pain, this intellectual being? What can we suffer worse? Is this then worse? Thus sitting thus in arms, shall we then live thus vile, the race of heaven thus trampled, thus expelled to suffer here chains in these torments? Better these than worst by my advice, since fate inevitable subdues us and omnipotent decree. I laugh when those with the spear are bold and venturous. If that fail them, shrink and fear what yet they know must follow. To endure exile, or ignominy, or bonds, or pain, the sentence of their conqueror. This is now our doom, which, if we can sustain and bear, our supreme foe in time may much remit his anger. Oh. And perhaps thus far removed, not mind us, not offending, satisfied, this horror will grow mild, this darkness light, if we procure not to ourselves more woe.
Either to disenthrone the King of Heaven we war, if war be best, or to regain our own right lost. Him to unthrone we then may hope when everlasting fate shall yield to fickle chance and chaos judge the strife. The former, vain to hope, argues as vain the latter. For what place can be for us within heaven's bound, unless heaven's Lord supreme we overpower? Suppose he should relent and publish grace to all on promise made of new subjection. With what eyes could we stand in his presence, humble, to receive strict laws imposed and celebrate his throne with warbled hymns, and to his Godhead sing forced hallelujahs while he lordly sits in heaven? This our delight? How wearisome, eternity so spent in worship paid to whom we hate. Let us not then pursue by force impossible, by leave obtained unacceptable, though in heaven our state of splendid vassalage. But rather, let us seek hard liberty before the easy yoke of servile pomp. Our greatness will appear then most conspicuous, when great things of small, useful of hurtful, prosperous of adverse, we can create, and in what place soever, thrive under evil, and work ease out of pain through labor and endurance. This deep world wants nodder in luster, gems and gold, nor want we skill or art from whence to raise magnificence. And what can heaven show more? Our torments may in length of time become our elements. These piercing fires, as soft as now severe, our temper changed into their temper, which must needs remain.